go to rugby. Ronan O'Gara is with us this morning. Ron, how you doing?
Hey, Gerard, good. Yourself?
Yeah, good. We're talking here about how teams maintain form into the business end of the season. Leinster chose to rest a bunch of their players for the game against Connacht. Saracens ended up playing most of their full team. Obviously, at the end of the season, you decide which one is more successful or not. But from your own playing days and as a coach now who is involved in teams who are in competition to try and win things, what did you prefer as a player and what do you think is best as a coach?
Yeah, probably the two extremes. I think when you're a player, you love having control and knowing that you're going to be playing every week. But I think, I was reading Leo Cullen's comments and Mark McCall's comments, and it's interesting. I think the key, Jar, is the competition for places. Once you have that, the environment drives itself. So you look at it in Leinster, there is competition for places. So, guys were getting an opportunity, but realistically, I would say out of the 23 places available for European Cup final, there probably is question marks over 2 or 3. And in Saracens' case, it's probably 1 or 2. It's very settled teams on both occasions. And in both setups, and that's what you get with the 2 most performing teams in Europe. I think, momentum doesn't really matter. You can come at it whichever way you want. And at this time, whether you're a coach or a player, you are really excited by the big day. There's no doubt about it. And you'll give the line that you have to perform week in, week out. But you're better off performing in the European Cup final than you are in the Kingspan away from home.
Is there... I remember when Man United won the treble, they won it on like 76 or 78 points. It was a really low total, but it was because the league was so difficult. And they actually ended up barely changing their team for the last 6 or 8 games of the year, which included the away trip to Juventus, where Roy Keane put in that performance, the Champions League final, where obviously they have that miracle victory in the end with the 2 late goals. Is there a case for a team being battle-hardened and actually you just get into a groove where almost irrespective of what the challenge is?
Yeah, I would definitely be a big fan of that, Jar, about rhythm. I think it definitely takes 4 or 5 games to get the best out of combinations and finding form, and then it's probably playing 3 of every 4 weeks. I think sometimes you can go in undercooked, but I think at this stage, the advantage probably Leinster have over the other provinces is that they have such experience and battle-hardened players, and they know how to get over the line. I think in the Examiner made the point about the Munster team, and it was from 2000 to 2006. There are always question marks because you don't know, what getting over the finishing looks like or tastes like. But these boys are on for, essentially some of them it could be their 5th time. And I said, no, there's only probably 1 or 2 of them that could be their fifth time achieving that, but it's a phenomenal, I suppose, achievement. So they know better than anyone about what it takes. So I do definitely think that there is massive value in that, but it's only probably once or twice a season when you get pushed to those utter limits, where that essentially what is trust and what defines trust. Trust is a loose word, and it doesn't mean much on paper, but actually when you act out trust, it's very, very powerful.
Yeah, and to be honest, from a Leinster perspective, they hope that only starts right now after the game at the weekend, because their next game where the full-time team is going to be out is the Champions Cup final, and then after that they'll have a semi-final, and who knows, maybe they will or won't have a Pro 14 final to do as well.
And also Ger, as well, in the fact that when you have someone like Jack McGrath not in the 23, it sends a rocket up everyone. That is the reality of it. Yes, it is a settled side, but you have a British and Irish line that's not featuring, so everyone subconsciously is on your toes. Leo has and Stuart has shown basically that A, we're not picking reputations, B, we're not picking names, and C, we're picking guys that are performing. So it's I don't know what it will be for the final, but it's I presume it's a bitter pill for Jack McGrath to be swallowing at the minute, because he's a competitor and he's achieved so much, and people don't really get that too. The more you've achieved in the game, I think the harder it is, and no matter what stage it is, to be left out, whether you're young, mature or immature as a player. So he'd want to finish really strong, and I presume he's tearing up trees to get back into that 23, because if you're going to the game in your blazer, it is a horrible feeling.
Yeah, and there's a World Cup on the line, World Cup spots on the line.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sorry, I forgot about that. that is it. But I suppose the players' mindset is they'll think about. Yeah, I mean, you look upon it. You talked about the Man United team that won that treble. Those moments, they wouldn't be on a par with winning a World Cup, but they're really, really special days for the clubs. And I think, especially in Ireland, with the parochial element to it, winning with your province is huge. And we're not at the stage where winning European Cups are treated in any, I suppose, under-embellished way.
Yeah, no, for sure. One of the other things we did want to talk about was Conor Murray pulled up with an injury in the warm-up at the game of the weekend. Gavin Kubicki had it that he just got bumped. He was, I think somebody bumped John Klein. Klein ended up knocking into him, and he immediately had his head in his hands. Like, he's so important to us, and he was just coming back to a bit of form that you want to see him get it out there straight away, but obviously the right thing to do is to wrap him up in cotton wool for now.
Well, yeah, I think Conor's hard, and he's hardy, and he wouldn't be kind of looking for an avenue out of games either. You know, some players, I suppose, that you've played with on through the years, you could kind of maybe predict that they'd be not picking games, but they might fancy certain games. But Conor is the guy who loads up the sleeves, and he's hardy, and it's a tricky area, Ger, a very complicated area, obviously, in terms of you know, when it's related to your spine or your neck. So a little innocuous bump could actually be quite significant. So I suppose we don't know, but in terms of the scan and what comes from that will be very, very telling. But just because it may seem innocuous, it could actually be quite serious, and vice versa is also very true. Yeah,
so fingers crossed it is ultimately innocuous, and that they were just doing the right thing and keeping him out of that. It's important for Munster to finish this season now with some silverware. Like, the Pro 14 has taken on a very significant element for them, so that they can point to progress this year, right?
Well, yeah, but it's like, that sounds great, or it sounds you know what I mean, attainable, but the reality is they have to go beat Bennett and Treviso, who won't be an easy game, I don't think, and then they have to go to the RDS, which you know what I mean, no other team in Europe has achieved that carrot. So the odds are stacked against them, there's no doubt about it, because they're coming up against a team that are performing year in, year out, and probably have a squad of players that are as hungry as Munster are. So I mean, that will be obviously their goal, Jar, but it would be a huge upset, I would feel.
Does that mean that there hasn't been a successful season, or is it just a season of staying steady? Like, ultimately, if how do Munster, when they start a season, judge success?
Well, I'd like to think, as an ex-player there and someone that has huge time for the place, I think they're judged on winning the European Cup. You know what I mean, some seasons over the past probably number of seasons, there's been times when they've been building towards that, and they probably winning it outright wasn't a realistic goal. But I felt this year the squad was strengthened. Carberry coming in, Ty Byrne is a huge addition, and in the centre, they have a lot more options they've had in previous years. So I think there is strength there. There's competition for places, and I think you know, I mean, getting to the semi-final is an achievement. But for guys that play there, that wouldn't be what they'd be wanting to achieve. I think Saracens and Leinster are ahead of everyone, and I would probably, looking on what I've seen so far, they've probably increased the gap instead of the other. I suppose the chasers haven't lessened the gap from the two leaders.
What's the most important thing for Munster to work off then in the off-season, Ronan, to close that gap?
It's a great question. I think the fact that I probably alluded to a little bit earlier, in the fact that so much is built. These games is built on trust and little details making significant differences during games. And I think Munster are close, but actually the shot of confidence they get from actually winning a big game, even though they don't know what it tastes like now, that I think is a huge area that probably needs to be addressed among their leaders. And then also the fact that I think they need to probably just develop their game, and the fact that I think their pressure game is excellent. They probably aerial game is good, but potentially their skill set to get their ball in hands from loose head props to 15 under, I suppose, high stress. That's an area that they can get better at. This their capacity to maybe I wouldn't say play an open, expansive game, because Munster always, I think, are different in the fact that they've always had areas of strength up front. But I think they can get the ball probably into the back rows, hands in wide areas a little bit more frequently, and also potentially they can probably, it's a buzzword, but play with a little bit more tempo.
Can you actually do that over an off season? Is that when you change that style of play, or when you evolve a style of play, or is it actually?
Yeah, that there's massive opportunity there, Joe. It really is the only time, in the fact that you probably have a 12-week window to embed. If you want to put in a new game plan, that's it. And I think that has to be the key months. In the fact you have July, August, and September, but it's a semi-finals or quarter-finals aren't an area to kind of see this for the first time. You have to play that game for a number of months. As you said, it's the same as boys being battle-hardened, but like guys need to be battle-hardened with a game plan as well as with personnel, and they need to have massive trust in the game plan. But you only get trust from a game plan like Leinster have when they get through big moments and big games, and that shows to them that it stacks up. And a lot of the game now is kind of being comfortable in chaos and turnover ball and counter attack and what you're doing off that. But the skill set of Leinster, and probably the tempo which they play at, and maybe Johnny's expertise in probably picking off defences, gives them a little advantage over the other provinces. And you do that in training. You don't obviously, because in training you've got to create match conditions, sure. Yeah. The fact that you still have, these squads have 40 players, so you can easily make two teams, and if you can make two teams on the 3 days a week you're training, and hopefully maybe the clarity sessions you have the other 2 days, significant progress can be made. But I suppose, like everything else, there has to be unanimous buy-in, otherwise it's not going to work. Yeah, we've just got some breaking rugby news here. Leinster and the IRFU have confirmed that John Fogerty will join Ireland from the 1st of July onwards, and Leinster are thanking John Fogerty for his time with them on Twitter there. So there it is, breaking news: John Fogerty to join at Irish Rugby from 1st of July onwards. You can read more there. So this has kind of been in the works for a few weeks, Ronan, but it's great news. Yeah, I won an AIL medal with Fogs and Con, so he's a good Rockwell boy. That's he has marbles in his mouth now that he's in Leinster. He works extremely hard. He's a diligent guy. He's hugely motivated. Sharp cookie. I think boys would really like him. I think he's got a great personality. I think he has great absorption levels, in the fact that he can take in so much from what players are saying, and then filter that to give his message. Very great sense of humour, and I think a hugely driven guy. And it's a proud day for his family, especially his mum from Tip. It's a lovely day. It's delighted for him. It's a good sign too that Irish coaches can come up within the system and make it all the way to the international setup. Of course they can. Yeah, it's great. It's another. Obviously, it's an Andy Farrell appointment, so credit must go to him too, that he's obviously looking all around the world for whoever he wants, but he's decided on an Irishman to fill. And to be fair, they're huge boots to fill. I think Greg Feek, from having spent a bit of time in camp and having remained in contact with him, is is a master of the scrum and appreciating what goes on and the significance of the scrum. And I think it's only when you probably spend your whole week devoted to rugby, Jerry, you kind of appreciate what Feek brings to the whole setup, because essentially a tight head prop is invaluable, and Ireland are lucky in the fact that they have Tadhg Furlong, but also I think they're very lucky in the fact that they have a master in Greg Feek, and I think people in the know would attribute probably the big turnaround in the Leinster Northampton game going back was his capacity, I think, to deliver a technical change at half time that kind of gets brushed under the carpet sometimes.
Yeah, as opposed to just the rousing speech from Sexton. Certainly Mike Ross always talked about that. They were all in the corner looking at iPads to see exactly what was going wrong while Sexton was giving a speech. So Mike Ross claims he's got no recollection of what Johnny Sexton said.